skin now. Becoming liminal spaces. Transforming, dragon to the altar. Becoming liminal spaces. Transforming, shedding all skins now.
Recorded live from the Engine Room in Broad Ripple, this is the Voices of Indy live stream hosted by Josh Gillespie. Voices of Indy is a show dedicated to giving you the opportunity to know the musical, visual, and theatrical arts of Indianapolis, Indiana. This week's guest is Josh Kreuzman of the dark wave, synthwave, goth. I'm going to get them all.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Dark wave band Twice Dark.
Mm-hmm.
He's a solo act, so that's we're gonna have a lot to talk about in everything that he's doing. So we will get to that here in a second. But first, I want to talk to you about Indianapolis Independent Entertainment. They are the sponsor of today's episode. IIE LLC's goal is to help grow local DIY artists, freelancers, and businesses within Indianapolis and generate more paying creative opportunities. Their mission is simple: to establish a network of creatives who excel in areas of need and connecting them with other network members. This way, they can help to expand the local art and music scenes. IIE believes that by eliminating some of the intimidating barriers within the entertainment industry, more opportunities will be produced for local freelancers and businesses. This will help Indianapolis become the place to go for art and music in the Midwest. If you are interested in learning more, go to their website, www.indyent.com. That's INDYINDIEENT.com, and fill out a free application to discuss how you and IIE can redefine making it together. And so this week's guest is Josh Kreuzman from Twice Dark. Josh,
Hi.
Thank you for being on the show this week. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's amazing. It's been very fun so far.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
I'm excited to have you on.
Mm-hmm.
You're my second goth
Yeah.
synthwave band, dark wave
Mm-hmm.
band on this season. So I'm excited to know more about the scene, more about this genre of music,
Okay.
which is growing
Yeah.
in Indianapolis,
Yeah.
and not just in Indianapolis, but you're from Bloomington,
Right.
so
Yeah.
it seems to have kind of a statewide reach.
Uh-huh.
But before we get into that,
Mm-hmm.
what should people know about Josh Kreuzman, and what should they know about Twice Dark?
So Twice Dark started in late 2019 or so. I was doing the demos for the first self-titled album, which you can find my music and videos anywhere you stream music and videos online. But I worked on the first album in 2019 in Indianapolis, in Irvington, actually. And then by the time I was ready to record, I moved to Bloomington. So I've been based in Bloomington since 2020. And I recorded the first album at Postal Recording in Indianapolis.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Alex and Tyler. They have a great studio on the east side of Indy, or west side of Indy, and it's amazing. They helped me with the first album and the EP, and they had a live drummer come in and do the drums.
Really?
Yeah. So I programmed everything with drum machines and samples and things, and for the recording they convinced me to have a live drummer because they knew someone who could do that and do it effectively and play basically like a metronome.
I was going to say that I felt like when I was listening to it that, and we should let people know that, again, yes, you can find all of Josh's music on wherever you happen to stream music. His self-titled one is the debut. Fault Lines is the EP.
That's right.
Do both of the albums have a real drummer, or
both albums have a live drummer? And
I'm sorry, it's a live drummer, not a real drummer.
Right. Yeah, I'm gonna. I would not be a good friend if I didn't plug the name. And
please
of
do.
course,
Yes. We like to plug all performers. Especially anybody who happens to appear on an album, get them shout outs if they can.
Right. Yeah. So Johnny Concannon is the drummer.
Okay.
And he's based in Indianapolis, and he's played for all kinds of bands. He's a session musician, and he tours with bands constantly. He's amazing, and you can find him online. So Johnny Concannon, incredible musician. He helped me with both albums, and I wasn't convinced at first because I wanted it to have like kind of like a true sort of cold wave sound, which would be, drum machines and synths
Yes.
exclusively,
Yeah.
But Alex and Tyler kind of convinced me to have Johnny play drums, which gave it, in my mind, more like the kind of style of like Ministry, something which uses live drums.
Mm-hmm.
It's an industrial band, but he'll use live drums, especially with his recent, anything past 1990, he has like a live drummer.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the 80s stuff, it seems more drum machine driven, but
Mm-hmm.
anyway, it has that sort of like live band industrial feel to it for the first couple albums.
Mm-hmm.
The newer stuff that I'm recording now, the single that I just released, which is out, and you can find that anywhere that you stream music. It's
Plague of the Masquerade.
Plague of the Masquerade.
Yeah, check it out, seriously.
Yeah, it's fun. And Joe Howard from Angry Red Planet, who's based in Indy, recorded that for me. He helped me record it. And Megan Lamb from Kill Scenes in Chicago did backup vocals for me.
I was going to ask you about that.
Amazing vocalist, yeah.
She is.
Yeah, really. And she went to school in Bloomington, and where Kill Scenes was incarnated was Bloomington, Indiana, and they relocated to Chicago, and I played with them recently. But we've been planning some shows together for the last couple months, and, I was aware of her talent, and I asked her to do backup vocals for me, and she agreed, and she did an amazing job, and it's really awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And, we didn't do that together. She did it in her friend's studio. Sean Whitaker from Kill Scenes recorded it there in Chicago and sent me the tracks, and we plugged it into the track, and it worked amazingly. Before I even met her in person, she had recorded that for me. So
no way.
Yeah, it was great. Before we even played a show together, she had done that for me. So
that is incredible.
Yeah, really incredible. Really cool. Yeah.
Well, that's going to lead me to another question, but that's a little bit further down the line.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and again, I get all the standard questions out of the way first.
Sure.
So, because I like to know my guests kind of on a bit of a personal level, and I think the viewers do as well. And part of that is getting to know what are your musical interests and those that have inspired you. Like, I could probably take a guess on a couple of things.
Yeah, I want to hear your guesses too.
Well,
so,
we'll get to that.
Okay,
we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But I want to know about from you, like who influences you as a musician? Who influences you as a programmer?
Okay.
That because I think that in itself is kind of its own.
True.
Own avenue
of
how you build your music.
Yeah.
And truthfully, when I listen to what you do, and you could say this pretty much about all musicians, they build their music from the ground up. But there just seem to be so many layers that go with what you do.
Yeah.
And we could see that when you were performing earlier, which you all will see here shortly. But there's a lot going on, especially as a one-man band.
Right.
But yeah, who inspires you, and who have been your influences going into making, let's say, what you're working on now?
So I would say for all of my music, Frank Tovey from Fad Gadget is somebody who I'm highly influenced by. He's an 80s musician and puts out industrial music, but it's so much more than that. It's not your standard EBM, electronic body music. It's not like Nitzareb. It's got layers, and it's early in the 80s before industrial and EBM really had defined what it was going to become, so there's musicianship and songwriting, and you could hear all that, even though he's using, toys and synthesizers and anything he can get his hands on to make noise.
Yeah.
But there's all kinds of musicians. I mentioned Ministry and Al Jorgensen, all his side projects from the 80s, Acid Horse, and, all the things that he's done have really influenced me as a musician, and especially Twice Dark. And when it comes to, programming, I would say, Al Jorgensen for sure. But, there's so many different musicians that influence me. There's new musicians who influence me. Drab Majesty's a big one. But 80s music in general, just
Mm-hmm.
pop, dance music. I'm a big fan of techno and anything electronic. Programming, when I think about programming and who influences me, and not that you can hear this in my music, but Aphex Twin is,
Mm.
just a kind of a mind blowing musician and someone I look up to. And I was trying to make music in the 90s. I went to school at Heron off 16th Street when it was still there
Mm-hmm.
on Pennsylvania. And I was trying to make music with drum machines back then. But I was not really as into goth music then. It was more
Yeah.
the music of the times, which was like electronic music that was, rave culture and things like that in the late 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Aphex Twin was one of the guys who I was very much influenced by and still am today, even though it's not as prevalent in my music.
Mm-hmm.
So, electronic music, 80s music, anything from Orbital to Nine Inch Nails,
I was gonna say Nine Inch Nails, a little
yeah,
Trent
The
Reznor
Cure,
yeah,
the
yeah.
Smiths. I'm a fan of all kinds of music, and I grew up on hardcore and death metal and
Really?
yeah, and you wouldn't be able to. Maybe that's not in my music so much now, but yeah, I grindcore, and I'm fascinated by all kinds of weird genres of music. Yeah. So there's a lot that goes into that question,
Mm-hmm.
and even I know we'll probably get to it, but even beyond music, there's splatter punk culture, and there's all kinds of things that influence my music. So yeah, there it is.
No, that's probably one of the most well defined answers I've received in a while. Mostly because so many things kind of go into uh into some inspirations, but I
Yeah,
find it fascinating, especially when it's about a kind of a genre of music,
yeah,
or several genres of music that I don't know a whole lot about, but
right,
that I'm learning about by doing the show and
right.
learning about the kind of musicians that are involved in this. Um, so it's fascinating to hear. That's why I always ask everybody, who's your
Yeah,
influence? What's getting you going?
yeah.
Um, so you are working on a new project, though.
A new album, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And the single, it would be the first song. The Plague of the Masquerade would be the first song from that release. I'm shooting for an album. I don't. It probably won't be an EP. It'll probably be a full length. But I'm working on the music now, and Joe Howard's helping me with that as well. So more to come. I've written some music. I've got about 3 more songs that are written that I'm going to start recording, but there'll be a much more. I don't plan on having that done. It'll be in 2023. I'll say that, but I don't
Mhm.
have. It'll be probably the summer before it's done. So,
No, that's fantastic.
yeah,
That's exciting to know that new music is
hmm
is kind of almost at our fingertips.
yeah,
Um,
coming soon enough.
yeah. So I want to talk now about the community.
Hmm
The one thing that I noticed when talking to Angel Maker, Chris and Andy, great guys,
Yeah,
uh, tremendous musicians. They talked a lot about how supportive the community is.
yeah,
The goth community, the synth wave, the dark wave, kind of all rolled into one. Um, but you guys do a lot of events together.
yeah. That's true. We have, yeah, a couple
Yeah.
shows together. And not only, you know, um, Indianapolis or even Indiana, there's the whole Midwest culture of musicians in that those genres, the goth and dark wave and cold wave and industrial, all the bands who are at that kind of lower level. I don't know what you would say that is, but people who are touring now in the
Hmm.
Midwest,
Yeah.
we all play together. There's Broken Nails in Louisville, and we're going to play a show with Vasm from Detroit here soon. Black Circle is a venue that we play shows at a lot. But yeah, it's a whole community of musicians who come together to make this happen. And yeah, Angel Maker, Chris is amazing. South Bend has a lot of good bands
Hmm.
that we play with a lot. Freeze Etch, Hypnagogia, Sad and Pretentious. Those are some guys that I've played with recently, all from South Bend and Detroit area. But yeah.
I have to ask,
Mhm.
just because is is the name sad and pretentious ironic? on
knowing
purpose.
him, I would say, yeah, there's some irony to it for sure.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's a sorrowful guy. So there's some
Okay.
sincerity to that as well.
Okay.
I would think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I don't think that people go into especially this kind of music without some sort of like they're very intentional.
I think so. Yeah.
And I think of there's a lot going on.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Absolutely.
And you could probably say that about any musician, honestly. But at the same time, I don't know. I feel like there is certain kinds of music that have a different kind of emoting that leads you to believe, okay, someone's going through something here,
right? Yeah.
And this is how this is their catharsis,
right?
This is how they are they're telling the world about how they feel, and the safest way to do it.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. There's a lot that goes into making this music, and there's a lot of emotion to it, and it's purposeful. There's intention to it, and I don't have the same angst I did when I was 15, but I can still pull from those. Mm-hmm. I can still pull from those feelings, from the whole spectrum of feelings from my entire life.
Yeah.
But I gravitate towards music that's darker. But I don't like to think of myself as a particularly like a sullen individual.
Yeah.
But it comes through in my music. The music tends to be more serious, and yeah, that is intentional for sure.
Yeah. What has made the community so supportive of each other, do you think? Because that's again, and you're right when you talk about that it's a Midwest thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because the event that you did at Black Circle, I believe, was in February.
Yeah.
Actually featured bands from Michigan, from Kentucky,
right. Yeah.
I believe Ohio, a number from Indiana.
Yeah.
And that was. I forget the name of the event, but
it was Midwest Gothic was the name of the release.
Yes.
It was a compilation I put together. I just I wanted to. Those bands are from all different kind of levels, from just starting out to people who are on labels, but we all support each other anyway. And I wanted all of us to benefit from each other's, fan base. Mm-hmm. And those bands who agreed to do that are awesome. And I'm so grateful that they decided to do that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that album is indicative of the community. But I'm meeting people all the time, and there's all these bands from Chicago that I've just met, and I can't wait to do another compilation that Midwest Gothic 2 or whatever.
Yeah.
But there are so many bands that are striving to do this thing. But I think, and during COVID, it was difficult to be a musician. It was difficult to be a person. But as a musician, it was tricky because you couldn't play shows. So luckily for me, I was just starting out, and I used that time to record an album. Mm-hmm. And
that's where we got the self-titled album.
That's where we got the self-titled album. And I figured out in that time how to play live. And during that time, I met a lot of people who were doing like Twitch events and things online.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I figured out how I didn't have a Twitch account at the time, but I was told it was a good thing to do, so I did. Mm-hmm. And I started doing shows online, and I met people not only from the Midwest, but from the East Coast and all over the place.
Really?
Yeah. Who came together to play shows together, and we were all kind of struggling. We wanted to create things, and we couldn't get out there and do it live, so we did it in our bedrooms, and we still were able to get together and have a culture together. So that was really awesome. And I met so many people that way. Rob Robinson was someone who mastered that first self-titled album, and he introduced me to a lot of people in the scene and got me a virtual gig. Right. And that really helped a lot. And, Joe Howard was the one who introduced me to Rob Robinson. Mm-hmm. So just from recording that first album, it helped me to meet so many people. And I wouldn't be here with you today if I hadn't recorded that album at Postal Recording. So, that is all to say, COVID really helped pull us all together as a
Yeah.
community and introduced us to each other and started a scene or bolstered a scene that
Mhm.
was that maybe wouldn't have happened otherwise. So COVID, for all the awful things that came with it, helped to build a community.
What do you think has led to the Renaissance? I mean, I think probably it has to do with some of the community because it was able to become so strong during COVID. You make an excellent argument for that being the case. Um, but it seems as if there have been in recent years
Mm,
just kind of a renaissance within goth, dark wave, cold wave,
yeah,
industrial, that kind of music.
yeah,
That again, when you kind of hear it, you think of a particular time
yeah,
in history.
yeah.
I mean, honestly,
Hmm.
but you're starting to hear it more in the mainstream now. As
Yeah,
as we were discussing off air,
yeah,
actually, as you were coming in, we talk about the Smashing Pumpkins and their
right,
latest album, Autumn, has a lot of these kinds of elements to it.
right. Yeah.
So how do you see that? Like, what do you think has been the cause of this kind of renaissance?
I think that, um, every couple of years there will be some new subculture that comes back up from the grave. It never really went away. It's always
Yeah,
been there.
yeah,
You
yeah,
can
yeah.
find, any genre of music is steadily trudging along since its incarnation. But with goth music it's the same thing, but now there's this boost, and I think it's been a boost of like 80s music for a long time, and all the things that come with 80s music, it comes back,
Hmm.
and the goth and industrial and stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of awful things that are going on in the world in general, and I think that probably pushes people to creative types to create certain types of things,
Hmm.
and so that probably encouraged certain people to create certain types of things.
Yeah.
But I think it's a natural progression. 90s music is coming back in vogue too, and it's just we keep recycling things, and we come back and start over and pick up where we left off and add something new to it. The 80s music, the 80s music in its time was amazing and influential, but the stuff that's happening today is even they're building on it.
Hmm.
There's
Hmm.
new labels and new musicians who are building on the technology that happened at the time. There's an electronic musician, Com Truise, is a play on Tom Cruise, and he takes
Love it.
the all the equipment that you could get in 1985, but he makes all his music with it today, but he uses it in different ways, and it's incredible the kind of stuff that he comes up with.
Wow.
It's circuit bending and all kinds of crazy things, and it's just incredible. I like the fact that we've had a resurgence like this, because there's all this there's new things that new tricks and new music and just new amazing things that will happen
Hmm.
from this, and it'll take a dip. It'll still be going on, but then in another 20 years we'll see it sprout back up again. So
Are you excited to be living through this right now? I
yeah.
mean, it seems as if this is something that I don't want to guess, your age. I don't like to do that to anybody. But if just based on, you're talking, if you were at Heron in the
Right.
90s, um, I can guess we're actually probably very close in
Sounds about
age,
right. Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, to kind of have lived through this once, but as a kid,
Yeah.
now as a musician, to be able to be part of this
Oh, it's
resurgence.
great. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that has to be really exciting.
Yeah, yeah, I grew up with 80s music, although I didn't really get into like the darker sorts of like like I said, I liked metal and all that kind of stuff
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
when I was a kid, which because there was a big like grindcore scene when I was in high school in the 90s, and that's what got me into going to shows and seeing smaller bands.
Hmm.
There was a band called Blatherskite who I'd go see. They were amazing.
Hmm.
But but anyway, 80s music influenced me as a kid, but I didn't really know about goth music. I started listening to the Smiths when I went back to college in the early 2000s, and from there kind of built on that into industrial and really, like I said, I was listening to like rave music in the 90s, and from that I like to learn about where music comes from. So I learned that a lot of techno comes from Detroit, or at least the stuff that I liked. And
really, I didn't know it comes from Detroit.
Well, there's a techno is
Yeah.
is a brand of electronic music that.
Well, yes, but I mean, like, I did not know that there was a big techno scene in Detroit.
Oh yeah,
of all
yeah,
places.
right, yeah, and some of the biggest musics in that from that genre, they created it. The house music in Chicago, techno in Detroit. But I was curious about like Juan Atkins, one of the biggest guys in techno. What was influencing him? And it was African Bambaataa and Kraftwerk and stuff like that. And so from Kraftwerk, I get Yellow Magic Orchestra, and then I get Throbbing Gristle and Chris and Cozy and all this Psychic TV, which which influenced rave culture. It's just all this stuff is connected, and that fascinates me. And the Specimen were a goth band from the 80s. They went on to they were the main guy, Ollie Wisdom, R.I.P. He was a trance musician in the 90s, and he would do that for the rest of his life. He was Goya, or I don't know how you pronounce it, but the trance music.
Yeah.
He was into that kind of thing, and a lot of the musicians from the 80s goth scene evolved, with the times into dance music and electronic music and techno. The Thompson Twins went in to become techno trance musicians.
Yeah.
And now the 90s subculture's coming back, and so is the 80s stuff. It all comes back, and it's all being done again. There's all that early techno and early house stuff. You can hear music like that's being made now, and you'd think it was from 1982 or 83 or whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you totally did. You absolutely did.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked about music kind of writ large here. I want to get kind of granular with yours.
Yeah.
I was listening to your self-titled, kind of heading into, and also listening to the Fault Lines EP.
Yeah.
And I noticed that, and I was talking to you a bit about this prior to the show, that there was a maturity in the sound from one album to the next, which, I mean, you kind of expect from an artist. You would hope that there is, some growth as they become better musicians and everything else.
Right.
But from the production level to the songwriting to everything, I mean, there seemed to be kind of a level up.
Okay.
From the self-titled, which and the Fault Lines came out last year, if I remember correctly.
22, yeah, that's right.
22.
Yeah.
So you had about 2 years in between.
Yeah.
And what do you think kind of led to that? I mean, and if you recorded the album at the same place. So I mean, what was it that you learned how to program, or was it the use of a live drummer? Was it the use of now, of course, the live drummer was on both albums, but what went into that?
Well, being able to play live shows and practice, when I started Twice Dark, I wasn't super confident about what I was doing. I have been in bands my entire adult life. Even, when I was a kid, I was playing guitar when I was 14, but, and that led into punk bands and stuff. And I played guitar. I didn't really sing, not at first. When I was in college in the early 2000s, I was in a band called the Neophytes, and I eventually would sing some backup, and I sucked. And, but that was okay, because I got better, right?
Yeah.
And I went on to, to start my own bands and sing and play and do my own thing and get comfortable doing that. I hadn't ever done a goth kind of project. I've always been influenced by that stuff, but I had never taken the dive to do that. And it was kind of new to me to do that. And I didn't even know if I could do Twice Dark as a live live band when I created it. I didn't know if it would work because I just didn't know. I was doing it myself. And I just knew that I wanted to record an album and put my best foot forward and try to get shows and meet people, which I did.
Yeah.
You know, which was great. But I didn't have the confidence. I didn't know if it was going to work.
Yeah.
And it happened to work. You know, it was effective in the way that I wanted it to be. But through playing shows, I got better. You know. So and through just playing shows, I got more confident. And I think that came through with the songwriting too. I got more sure with the programming. I got more sure with what people were responding to, and I could, you know, move forward with purpose and with confidence. So,
well, I want to take this moment to get the camera back onto us, but take a moment to listen to a couple of tracks from Josh Kreuzman, Twice Dark, and we're going to be hearing the songs "Liminal Spaces" and "The Plague of the Masquerade," correct?
That's right.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So we will be right back after this. Please stick around because these songs are amazing. I got to see them do them live, so I mean, I know. And we'll be right back after this.
Liminal spaces, transforming, shedding your skin now. Becoming liminal spaces, transforming, drag you to the altar. Becoming more. Pick up the knife. Pick up the knife and start to write the sacrifice. Liminal spaces, transforming, shedding your skin now. Becoming liminal spaces, transforming, dragging to the altar. Becoming more. Pick up the knife. Pick up the knife and start to write the sacrifice. Sacrifice. Run, you're running in the dark. The moon, the only light. Forget the way you were. You're changing. Liminal spaces, transforming, shedding your skin now. Becoming liminal spaces. Transforming, dragging to the altar. Becoming more. Pick up the knife. Pick up the knife and start to write the sacrifice. Sacrifice. Run. You're running in the dark. The moon, the only light. Forget the way you were. You're changing now. Liminal spaces, transforming, shedding your skin now. Becoming liminal spaces, transforming, dragging to the altar. Becoming liminal spaces, transforming, shedding your skin now. Becoming liminal spaces, transforming, dragging to the altar. Becoming more. light fades from the fire, and the heat fades from desire, and the last thing that you realize, we are the plague of the masquerade. We are the plague of the masquerade. We are the plague of the masquerade. We are the plague of the masquerade.
And welcome back. I'm with Josh Kreuzman from Twice Dark, and we just heard Liminal Spaces and The Plague of the Masquerade. Josh, tell me about these songs a bit. First, let's start off with Liminal Spaces.
Okay.
That came off of your self-titled album.
That's right. Yeah.
What is the inspiration behind that song? What went into that particular number? Where were you? What were you? What was going on with Josh Kreuzman at the time?
Well, one of the lyrics for my songs are not necessarily anything that has to do with me in that moment, but lyrics. I'll if I hear something that seems lyrical to me from a movie or whatever, or a book, a podcast, anything. I'll make note of it and write it down. So, liminal spaces was just a concept that appealed to me because, well, in the song, there's this sort of, it's kind of like I'm talking about vampires or monsters or obviously like werewolves or something.
Yeah.
Which I am, but I'm trying to use monsters and transformation. The double meaning. It's more about like personal change and going through rough patches and coming out the other end as something else. And that change is inevitable. You can't get away from it. It's going to happen. Deal with it, or don't, and suffer the consequences.
Sure.
So there's a lot of my songs are all usually about sort of dark concepts, but monsters and like the Misfits and horror punk in general is an influence for me, and I want to talk about monsters and things like that. But I like I like monsters as a metaphor for the human condition in general, and so I like to bring that into the lyrics a little bit without being too pretentious. But just having some more depth to it than just talking about vampires. Yeah. But that's typical. That's really what that song was about.
Sure.
Liminal Spaces. Yeah.
No, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love that kind of that take on the human condition, to be able to kind of dive into it in a different way than I think people would expect.
Yeah.
So that's and talking about change. I wouldn't necessarily think about monsters, werewolves, vampires, anything like that as that kind of subject. But I think that when you get down to it, when people were actually writing stories about that, or whether they're writing songs about that, that's what they were actually writing about, probably. Was a tale of the human condition, but from this perspective.
Absolutely. Especially the early, Frankenstein and Dracula, very clearly that was about much more than a monster. And if you see more recent iterations of Dracula, it's usually about, addiction is one thing, one concept, but it's more than that. But usually addiction is in there, and it may have been from the beginning. I don't know, but I think monsters in general have always been a double-edged thing. It's about a monster, but it's also about a part of our psyche.
Yeah. Let's talk about Plague of the Masquerade. As you mentioned earlier, that is your most recent single. It is kind of a foretaste of what we can expect from your upcoming project. What went into the Plague of the Masquerade?
Oh, okay. So again, if I hear something that I like lyrically, I'll write it down. And the plague, as pestilence and just awful disease, COVID, right?
I would say that it's kind of on the tip of the tongue right now these days.
Yeah, and even though we're a little removed from it, it's still there. It's still we're still in it, and the masquerade. So it's about the masquerade is the entire world stage, and coming to the realization that, hey, maybe we're the reason that so much awfulness is going on in the world. I mean, it's kind of sarcastic because obviously that's the case.
Yeah.
But that's the idea. It's just that, there's a masquerade and all the animals of the world are invited, and we are the plague.
Yeah.
Humanity is the plague of the masquerade. So it's cheesy, but that's the concept.
Yeah.
I liked the plague of the masquerade. I liked the way that those words kind of flowed. So from there, I kind of came up with the rest of the concept of the song.
Fascinating. No, I appreciate that. I mean, so this question may sound a bit, I don't know if callous is the right word, or maybe just not completely understanding.
Sure.
But, where does one find hope in a lot of this? Is the hope just that the fact that you're able to release these feelings in music in a kind of way?
Right. Yeah. No, I think so. And my lyrics are far more pessimistic than I actually am. I'm trying to dive into a side of myself because for one, it's supposed to be entertaining.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I'm purposefully writing for a specific audience. And I mean, I'm attempting to. I feel like I've succeeded in some sense, but the idea is that I'm trying to create. I want to create a spooky atmosphere for the kids.
Yeah.
So it's what I'm talking about in my music isn't really about how I feel. There is some of that, but not. But really, it's I'm trying to come up with concepts that are fun and that are jarring, and it's not going to be shocking, But
Sure.
But things that get, have some meat to it that at least make you stop and think. I'm not writing love songs. Not that I'm opposed to it, but I gravitate towards darker material, and I like it just. Funner for me, it's fun to work with.
Yeah,
as my clay.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that answer.
Yeah.
I mean, it's and I hope that didn't come across as completely not understanding. It's
No.
It's again, I think it's a way to kind of help me understand this style of music and what kind of guides people in it. I understand why people like it. I mean, I really enjoy it simply because especially for what Twice Dark has produced, what Angel Maker has produced.
Yeah.
I know the stuff that I hear from you guys, I can enjoy it simply from a musical perspective and be like, this is good stuff.
Cool. Yeah.
And I may not necessarily, if I went to one of your shows,
right,
I'd stick out like a sore thumb.
Maybe. You never know. I don't know. I think you'd be surprised, but I know what you mean. I know how you'd feel that way. Yeah.
But at the same time, I still think that I could groove to it.
Yeah.
I think that I could thoroughly enjoy it.
Yeah.
And be like, this is all right, and still find that hope or that bright side because I'm enjoying the music. I feel like so many people when they and especially this was a fad during it was a fad in the 80s and the 90s for sure, but like when they hear when parents would hear certain kinds of music, they would immediately think that this is leading their child down a certain path. And
right.
And I think that's a fundamental misunderstanding of that person's interest in the music.
Right.
And quite possibly a fundamental misunderstanding of the individual.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And of course, that's going to happen when people are teenagers, but at the same time, I find where people get their inspiration fascinating.
Yeah.
Or how they pursue certain types of music.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. And when you posed the question, it made me think of my mom when I'm a kid. It's like, why are you listening to this? Like, is this how you feel? It's like a little bit, but not totally. It's just fun. I mean, I just enjoy it. I don't expect my mom to like it, but that's not the point. It's like this is for me. This is what I gravitate to, and I like all kinds of media, but I tend to gravitate towards darker stuff. When it's if it's literature, I like horror novels. I'm sure
Yeah.
that would be an easy thing to guess, but you know, I like all kinds of literature. I've read I like everything. You know, I'm on a comic book kick right now, but I do like some horror.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's just what I enjoy. But it doesn't. I don't give it a lot of thought, like where's the hope in it. It's like I don't think about that much. I'm thinking about how cool that bass line sounds or how cool that drum beat sounds for
Yes.
me, you know.
No,
And
I
you
hear,
know,
yes, I
and
hear
then
that.
I'd be content, and I am with instrumental music a lot. But when I write music, it just tends to have lyrics. It just needs to.
Yeah.
At least I feel like it
Yeah,
does.
yeah, yeah.
You know. But I mean, I love instrumental music, but if I'm going to add lyrics to something, then I want it to be something I enjoy thinking about, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So that tends to be some darker stuff,
Yeah.
you know?
Now, one thing you mentioned earlier, there was like, when you're listening to something, you'll notice like a bass line. And then what I noticed about Twice Dark is that you use the bass as a lead instrument.
Yeah.
That is the lead guitar sound
Yeah.
in a lot of what you do. How did that come about? Because that seems to be few and far between. But for those who use the bass as a lead instrument, they can do it pretty well.
Oh,
But
yeah.
it's not one particular kind of music that does it.
Yeah, right. Well, I think you hear it in synth-based music, like New Order. Peter Hook has, you hear his bass lines, and if you don't know, a lot about music or instruments, then you might hear his bass line and think it's a guitar, but or whatever, but it stands out, and that's the melody,
Mm-hmm.
And I like the heft and the simplicity. I played guitar when I was a kid, and I can play some power chords, but I just eventually gravitated to the bass because it's easier.
Mm-hmm.
You can just single notes at a time for the most part, and I never got too complicated. I play with a pick,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just
I play with the bass with a pick too, so it's all right. Yeah.
So I don't know. I just like I I enjoy playing the bass guitar, and it's my instrument of choice, and
Mm-hmm.
it tends to take a front seat in my music writing,
Yeah.
because it's the instrument I play. But there's guitar stuff especially in the first album. There's guitar stuff, but technology limits me a little bit. I try not to add too many things that. I mean, I realize I've got backing tracks behind me, and everybody realizes that,
Yeah. Yeah.
But I want to be doing enough on stage, and so but I want it to be full as well. So you'll hear vocal samples of me. It's like, you didn't do that. Where'd that come from? There's vocal samples of me that for some of the backing stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but so with some of my newer material, it tends to be a little bit more stripped down and not as many samples of me,
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll get a guitar player someday. I'd like that. But
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
now, I keep, synth, drums, bass, vocals. I keep it small. I
Yeah.
try to keep it tight,
Mm-hmm.
So
And it's amazing to pull that off as a one-man band. I mean, honestly.
it was a lot to figure out, and it wasn't the idea at first. It wasn't.
Sure.
I tried out a couple different musicians, and they were great, but it didn't work out. And eventually, I realized I can probably do this myself, so I figured out how to, and it worked out.
Mm-hmm.
That's not to say I would. It would be awesome if I had like a full band doing the Twice Dark stuff. That'd be great.
Yeah.
But growing up, I was always in other people's bands, and I just wanted something that was my own, that I didn't have to compromise anything.
Yeah.
It's 100% me, and I wouldn't expect anybody to do that for me. So, if someone wants to do that, awesome, maybe it'll happen. But, I'm content to do it by myself for now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask you, and it's going to escape me here, but I'm not going to let it.
Yeah.
Is I'm not going to let it.
You've got this.
I got this. You're right. I totally got this.
You're just like me, though. It's like,
Things will just like, okay, it's like, oh, I know where this was going, and then all of a sudden it veers off into a completely different direction.
right.
So until I come back, I can remember that. What comic books are you reading?
Oh, well, at the moment, I'm reading Invincible, but I like graphic novels in general.
Mhm.
Like Preacher was one of my favorites. Lock and Key is amazing. Joe Hill's amazing. He's just great. But that's Stephen King's son. If
Oh,
your
really?
listeners didn't know that, yeah,
Did not
yeah.
know that.
He uses his middle name, so Joe Hill, yeah. But what else? I mean, I just anything under the sun. But I am an illustrator as well. Not that I do that a lot in my life now, but
Really?
yeah, when I was, I talked about going to Heron earlier, and
It's like that makes a lot of sense.
yeah, right. Yeah, I've eventually got a BFA in sculpture, but my real talent was illustration and then comic books and stuff like that. And so I enjoy comic books for that reason. I just the art, I love it. Yeah, but Invincible is the one I'm reading right now.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Is that now, forgive my lack
That's
of
okay.
knowledge here.
Yeah.
Is that like a DC or a Marvel thing, or is that completely different?
Image.
Okay.
Yeah. Robert Kirkman. It's the same guy that did Walking Dead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He's a good writer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
And you can just see the comic books that lend like every page is a screen, or you could see it on the screen. You know what I mean? Like it just you could just translate it directly from the comic book to the screen, so it makes a nice transition. It makes sense that they're turning comics into movies and TV shows now because the technology's there. We can do it. You know. So, yeah.
Have you caught any of The Walking Dead? And if so, what is your opinion of it?
Well, when it first came out, I watched a lot of it, and I loved the comic book, so I read and watched it in tandem, and they did a great job. I stopped at a certain point. I stopped watching it, but it was great
too.
for several seasons.
Honestly.
I loved it. I thought it was a really good show.
I basically, it was about the time, maybe a season after they introduced Negan.
Right. Exactly.
And I was just like,
right there. Yeah.
Okay, I can't deal anymore with this.
I know, and nothing wrong with the character because he's great.
No, Negan was a fantastic character.
It was crazy. It was craziness, but something around that time period, I think once it gets to like 6 or 7 or 8 seasons in a show, I'm just like, no thanks, I'm done. You know, I'm moving on to something new. I just don't like British shows. They'll do 1 or 2 seasons and they're out, and that's great. I love that, and leaving you wanting more. You know, Fleabag is a beautiful show. 2 seasons done. You know, and I love shows like that. They're just like short and sweet and to the point.
To your point about that, I think of the show Black Mirror.
It's great.
Which, I mean, until Netflix took it over.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that?
No.
So it's a BBC show originally,
right? Yeah.
And I mean, not that Netflix did a bad job.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the seasons, I would say that one of the episodes. Are you up to date with Black Mirror at all?
I'm pretty sure I am. Yeah.
Okay, so the black and white episode with the mechanical dog.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that felt strangely timely. But that was also probably the most American episode.
Okay.
I think you know, like or except maybe the likes, where everyone had to. The social media one.
Yeah, I like that episode.
That was a good episode.
That was a good
timely.
episode. That was timely.
I mean, it's all timely in its own way. I mean, you can't watch an episode of Black Mirror and think that, oh man, this doesn't make any sense.
No, right. It's dystopic in an appropriate way for us today. It's very realistic. Yeah, it's there. We're there.
I love that shit. We are absolutely there.
Yeah.
Oh man. See, now this is what I'm talking about. The conversation can go anywhere.
Yeah. It's fun.
If we let it.
Yeah.
And I still can't remember the question that I was going to ask.
That's okay. That's no big deal, I mean, how about this? Okay, so I've got a couple shows coming up.
Yes, please tell me about this. We got some gigs coming up.
So in Bloomington, I have a recurring goth event called Gallow Dance, and on St. Patrick's Day, Palm Ghosts from Nashville is coming, and Kill Scenes from Chicago is coming, and a buddy of mine from Columbus, Danny Detox, is coming to DJ, so that's going to be fun.
Wow!
But in Indianapolis, on April, the 14th, at Black Circle, Vasm from Detroit, and who we got? Feral Ghost from Chicago, and I'll be playing that show as well. That's going to be fun. And then Gallow Dance on the 21st. Bellhead from Chicago, they're amazing. They do a lot of bass in that band. So,
okay, all right.
Talking about bass as a lead instrument, they do that. And then Freeze Etch from South Bend, he's an amazing electronic musician. And then DJ Plague MD, also from South Bend. So those are the shows that are coming up soon that I'm doing. Yeah.
That's a lot. You're
Yeah,
busy.
well, that's March and April. Yeah, I am, but I'm trying to take a little bit to dial it back a little bit so I can actually finish an album. So
Yeah.
bring it down to like 2 shows a month instead of 3.
Yeah.
I was
So
doing that last year
have you started pre-production, or are you okay?
for the album.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I sent some new songs to Joe, and he's listened to them, and then we'll get together soon enough and record those. And as I have new material, record them and polish them. He's an amazing musician. So Angry Red Planet is his project.
Mm-hmm.
It's an awesome band. They're local as well, but he's been in the scene for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, we're starting that, and it's happening soon.
Well, you kind of jogged my memory real quick when you
Okay.
said that your event in Bloomington.
Yeah.
One thing that I did want to ask you, this wasn't the question. The question has been lost to the ether. So,
Okay. That's okay.
but Bloomington.
Yeah.
What drew you to Bloomington?
Sure.
And two, it seems like Bloomington is it in itself kind of a has its own very vibrant scene
Yeah.
for goth, synthwave, cold wave, dark wave.
Yeah, it does.
Music.
Yeah. And it always has. Well, in the time that I've lived there. So I graduated from there in 2005, and I lived there from like 2001 to like 2007 or so.
Mm-hmm.
And I went off and lived my life elsewhere and came back. I was in Indianapolis with my girlfriend in Irvington for a long time, but we just needed a change of scenery. And I had lived in Bloomington already. I loved it. It's a beautiful college town and a lot of culture, a lot of good music. And I still knew some people down there, so we went and hung out with a friend of mine, and she enjoyed it. And so we decided to move down there because we were looking for a move anyway.
Yeah.
So no big reasoning, just wanted to change of pace.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if like the scene drew you in, or if it, if it was just a better place to create.
Yeah. We just wanted something a little bit more peaceful. Irvington is like right in the, right outside the city, very hectic, very loud, lots going on. And Bloomington is it's not that, especially where we live. So we live off campus away from the student population. So it's very peaceful and, it's very nice. But because I'm there, I'm back, I'm back in the music scene and it's awesome. There's it's
fantastic.
Still happening.
Yeah.
Still happening.
That's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I before we get to the last question,
okay,
because I think that we're probably there.
Oh, sure. Yeah, sure.
I want to talk about one particular thing, and that is the Engine Room Recording Company, where we do this fine podcast with Josh Kreuzman. Engine Room Recording Company, they are located in Broad Ripple Village, just north of downtown Indianapolis, and they specialize in making your projects go. Podcasters, bands, audiobookers, rappers, singers, songwriters, and everyone in between, the Engine Room Recording Company has the engineers, the equipment, and the environment to fuel your projects. Check out Broad Ripple's recording studio by visiting for more information on their services, artists they've recorded, and gear they have at engineroomrecordingcompany.com. And be sure to visit their Instagram page by searching up at Engine Room Recording Company. Cool. Josh, is there anything that we've missed that you feel like you want to talk about, or that you feel like we should have covered?
I don't think so. I think we covered a broad range. We talked about 90s, grindcore and comic books. So yeah. I think we covered all the bases, really.
We really did. We really did. No, that's pretty good. And your next project is going to be coming out sometime, maybe summerish.
That's the goal. It'll be amazing if that actually happens because it's a lot to do between now and then. But I think it's doable. So yeah.
Late summerish.
Yeah, we'll call it that. We'll call it that. Yeah,
August, September, maybe.
Yeah.
That seems fair.
Yeah, it seems doable. I think that can happen.
All right, excellent.
Yeah.
And be sure to check out Josh's music on wherever you happen to stream music.
Yeah.
Again, it's Twice Dark. He has one full album, self-titled. He has Fault Lines, which is his EP, and then the single, The Plague of the Masquerade, which again is a foretaste of what to expect for the third album.
And then the Midwest Gothic is a nice compilation to check out too.
Oh, is that a playlist?
Oh, well, it's the compilation we were talking about earlier. So it's got all those. I have a song on there from the EP, but all the bands from the Midwest are on there, and they're wonderful. Chris's band Angel Maker's on there too, so lots of good stuff there.
And of course, all the upcoming shows that Josh will be doing here in March and in April. Josh, thank you so much for being on the show. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah.
It has been a pleasure to have you on.
It's been fun.
And I hope that you guys will tune in next week when my guest will be Malingo, which you might recognize one of my guests, next week's guest, because he's been on the show already. John Boyle is part of the band Malingo. And I'm excited, very excited to have them in. We'll see how that goes in this tight little space.
Awesome.
But it's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you again, Josh, for being on the show. My name is also Josh. Don't want to confuse you. But thank you for tuning into Voices of Indy this week. We'll be back again next week. See you soon.